New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. And good morning, dear ones. Dr. Robert with you here on a Saturday morning. It's 9 a.m. on the Mountain Time Zone, and that means it is time for our Saturday Science of Mind and Spirit conversations. Happen every Saturday morning here on the New Thought Media Network. As the video says, this is our chance to study the Science of Mind textbook. I have mine right here. Losing my stuff over here. Got mine right here. It's got all kinds of notes in it because this is chapter 16, the principles of successful living. And this is one of my personal favorite chapters. So I'm really, really grateful that you're with us here this morning and grateful that you're making time to come study the science of mind with me. Yes. All right. And a big thank you to everyone that is the whole team. I love the team we have put together for this series. And this is our 5th year now that we've been doing this. And every year it just keeps getting better and better with the team that comes together to share these messages and to explore this text. This is a transformative book. It's transformed countless lives. It transformed my life. And I think it will forever be my favorite New Thought text in the world. And so I love studying it. And but back to our thank you. Thank you to everyone, all of our folks that made the last 3 weeks possible. Reverend Victoria Bomberry, Reverend Elzia Sekou, and Reverend Barbara Jean, all bringing forward those 2 chapters on physical perfection. It's a lot of material. Oh my God, it's a ton of material. And between the 3 of them, they did a really, really great job on sharing a well-rounded look at how the science of mind approaches physical perfection. And as the book would have it, that leads us to the principles of successful living, which is what we're all about here today. The principles of successful living. Before we get there, I do also want to have a little sip of tea here. I want to remind you that this is an interactive program. You're welcome to share any chats, questions, anything you might have, any questions that might come up as we go through our work here this morning. Good morning, Althea. Good to see you. Grateful that you're with us. Watch it on YouTube. Hit the YouTube buttons, folks. The YouTube's the best place to watch all this. So, and if you're watching on a replay, I have been told that there are a number of professional practitioner students across the country that during their studies have been following along and joining us in our study, which is great. So I'm really happy about that. Also, big shout out before we get started to the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. what we do with this book is we study the book until, well, we're getting close. Late July, we only got a couple more months and we're done with the main part of the book. And then, so from there, we go into the Science Mind archives and we choose resources from the archives to focus on that help to expand our understanding of Ernest Holmes's teachings of New Thought and of the science of mind. So really, again, okay, this is a massive chapter in only 12 pages. Because almost every paragraph and almost every piece of this is kind of necessary to the overall understanding of it all. So I might move quick in some places. I consider this Saturday morning a little bit more of an advanced study. Most people here have some understanding. If it's your very, very first experience of the Science of Mind textbook, then we forgive how quick I might move. But that's where you drop that's where you drop your questions. Make sure you're dropping your questions because I will slow down for questions. Also, I do my best to shift the language, the gender language within the book and within the text, and make a more gender neutral presentation of this. So again, sometimes we might slip over some words, but I try to clean up the gender stuff in here a little bit. So right off the top, lessons on prosperity and mental control of conditions are sometimes dangerous because of the understanding of the subject. Lessons on prosperity and mental control of conditions. I like to remind everybody, we are always focusing on the mental control of conditions. Prosperity is actually sort of one of those, but it is also a consciousness piece as well. So lessons on prosperity and mental control of conditions are sometimes dangerous because of the misunderstanding of the subject. Science of Mind is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Neither does it promise something for nothing. It does, however, promise the one who will comply with its teachings that they shall be able to bring greater possibility and happier conditions into their existence. So it's not boom and I'm prosperous. It's not boom and my child is healthy. It's not snap my fingers and there's a new car in the driveway or more money in the bank account. However, to the one who complies with the study, to the one who really complies with the teaching, well then greater possibilities and happier conditions exist. Good morning, Dad. Good to see you, dear one. Grateful that you are with us. Courtney, we are reading from the regular edition of the Science of Mind textbook. Dink. There you go. And we are currently on page 266, the beginning of the chapter. So the promise is there. And I shared this line recently. I use it a lot more and more, but everything possible, right? The promise is there that everything possible, anything you might desire, all that you want to be and do and have in the world is there for you. And this is how we're going to get there. No one can demonstrate peace. This is on, page 267. No one can demonstrate peace and cling to unhappiness. No one can cling to peace, can demonstrate peace while clinging to unhappiness. No person whose entire time is spent in the contemplation of limitation can demonstrate freedom from limitation. This is the oh poor me, oh poor me. Why am I always why am I single? Why am I always broke? Why don't I have enough money? Why are things not working out for me? The contemplation of limitation. No person who, and Holmes on page 267, Holmes capitalizes this whole sentence, which we now interpret as shouting, but in his day it was deep emphasis. No person whose entire time is spent in the contemplation of limitation can demonstrate freedom from such limitation. And that is we have a typo here. We're in chapter 16. 15. So when we feel like we're in limitation, when we feel like things, we can look at the why, and I often say why is never a relevant question. We can look at why this is happening to me, but all that does is keep us in the limitation. We're contemplating the limitation. We're thinking about what went wrong or what didn't work or what can I do better. That's the old style. Look to the future. Look to let go of the limitation. And rather than saying, why didn't this work? Just ask, what am I going to do this time? What am I going to do? How am I going to try this the next time? What might I do on a different time? On a different opportunity? So, middle of page 267, the law is infinite. The science. So the first part of this, of successful living, is the recognition that nothing is for free. Nothing is just handed to us. Nothing is just given to us. We have to put in the mental effort, eventually the physical effort as well, but we're not getting something for nothing here. So let's take a look at the law. Now, oftentimes the law is a tricky kind of term for people, and I don't know that I have ever quite found a better term than the law, other than maybe adding universal to it, just so that people kind of get an idea. It's not human law. It's not a restrictive law. It's not a law that tells you what you can't do, which is what we often have in the human world. This is the law that we, in partnership, can do. You with me? Thumbs up in the comments if you're with me, or shout out yes. The science of mind is based entirely upon the supposition that we are surrounded by a universal mind into which we think. This capital M mind, in its original state, fills all space. So there is this infinite mind that we are surrounded by, universal mind, and we think into that mind, and that mind is everything, fills all space. There is no limit to the law, but there appears to be a limit to one's understanding of it. As our understanding unfolds, our possibility of attainment will increase. All right, so the law is truly infinite. And this is backing up. This is also on 267. The law through which one operates is infinite, but one appear. All right, too many he's and hims and mans in that paragraph to try to read it. So I'm just going to explain it. And that last sentence does kind of explain it. There's no limits to what we can become other than our own self-imposed limitation that is a belief that says I can or I can't. No limit to the law, no limit to the universal creative law whose job it is to take up our word, our thoughts, our beliefs, and make it so. And that's true for everyone. There's no limit to the law, but there appears to be a limit to our understanding of it, of the law. As our understanding unfolds and increases, our possibility of attainment, of demonstration, of bringing into our lives the conditions of cleaning up the conditions of being more prosperous, of all these things, the possibility of attainment will increase. What this means is there's no such thing as preordination. We're not preordained to be poor or to not have enough or to be single or to be any of the human conditions, because we always have the ability to increase our understanding of how all this works, and therefore we work it and we get better results. You with me? Again, feel free to shout out yes in the chat box. Ask your questions as we go along. So at the bottom of 267, Holmes is saying, it is a great mistake to say, take what you wish, for you can have anything you like. We do not take what we wish, but we do attract to ourselves that which is like our thought. We must become more if we wish to draw a greater good into our lives. So if I wish to have more love in my life, I have to be more love. If I wish to have greater support in my life, I have to be willing to support. And I have to be in support, not only of my life, but of those around me. So on 268, we continue in the second paragraph there. And this whole, the rest of this page and pretty much all of 269 and into 270 and all the way over through the end of this into 271, this is all an explanation of how the law operates. And I have every paragraph, there's either a highlight, a star, an underline, or something that makes this chapter, this is some of the richest new thought, science of mind there is from my perspective. So 268, the law is a law of liberty, but not a law of license. Get that? We have liberty, but not license. It is exact and exacting. And unless we are willing to comply with the law's nature, its nature, and work with it along the lines of its inherent being, we shall receive no benefit. So unless I am willing to work with the law, its nature, the way the law works, I can't make the law work my way. I have to be willing to work the way the law works. Everyone must pay the price for that which we receive, and that price is paid in mental and spiritual coin. Now, this is a long-held sacred statement, if you will, in professional practitioner training within Centers for Spiritual Living, within other organizations. But it means really almost nothing if we don't understand the first part of the paragraph. The law is a law of liberty, but not a law of license. We are free to do, but we don't have we're not entitled to do that. It is exact and exacting. And unless we are willing to comply with its nature and work with it along the lines of its inherent being, we shall receive no great benefit. Everyone must pay the price for that which we receive, and that price is paid in mental and spiritual coin. In our mental awareness and our spiritual action, our spiritual living, our spiritual activity. Mental and spiritual coin. All nature conspires to produce and manifest the freedom of the individual, that it may loose its own energy. Now, that's not just the individual human, by the way. That's all of life. And that's why in how I'm interpreting the evolution, the revelation, the next wave of new thought, we have to remember that we're not talking just about human life. We're talking about creating a world that works for all life. That's animal, mineral, plant, human, extraterrestrial, the forms of life we don't understand that are living on this planet, angels, all of the various expressions of life in this dimension and beyond. All nature conspires to produce and manifest the freedom of the individual that it may loose its energy. We may be sure God is for us, whatever our conception of God may be, whatever our conception of the relationship of Jesus and the idea of Christ to humanity and God and our own salvation may be. No matter how we look at it, this is key, right? No matter how we perceive God, however we want to define it, however we want to look at it, we must recognize that this power, presence, and intelligence, that this universal oneness is for us. He doesn't say it here, but he says it in other places, and never against us. There's not some power out there saying, sorry, you're not good enough. There's no force or energetic vibration out there saying, well, you kind of didn't tithe enough last month, and because you only gave 5% of your good to your spiritual community, we're only going to give you 50% use of the law. With me? The law says, back to and so part of what he's leading into here is, remember, this book was written when our primary spiritual experience was our relationship to what we called the Christian God or Jesus and the teaching of Jesus. And in many ways, Science of Mind is more based on the teachings of Jesus than it is on the teachings of the Christian church. We can have that conversation another time if we need to. We may be sure God is for us, whatever our conception of God may be. Whatever our conception of the relationship of Jesus and the idea of Christ to humanity and God and our own salvation, this thing must act in accordance with definite law in the universe. And this law says, here we go, you ready? Listen close. The law says that whatever and wherever there is an adequate subjective image which does not contradict the nature of the universe, that image will not only tend to take form, but will take form and will manifest. This law we did not make and we cannot change. Now, one of these places where I read this statement, and we're going to take a little diversion here, is in the process that this is why genocide can never be completed. Think about that. The human race will never actually fully complete. We might try, we have, and there have been attempts at a complete genocide. However, based on this, that can't happen because the primary principle is life everlasting. And we can have another conversation in another time about the eternality of life and reincarnation and all those things. What we're talking about here is the deep truth that the image, if there is an adequate subjective image, if I can get enough image in my mind and in the mind of the collective, if there is an adequate subjective image and it does not contradict the nature of the universe, the nature of the universe is to bring life, is to be life, that image will not only tend to take form, but will take form and will manifest. So we can never get to a point where we completely eradicate life, because life is an image, a subjective image, that it is powerful beyond belief. We always are here to remember that the universe and life is with us, for us. Althea, yes. Althea is asking, can the law possibly be viewed as the creative force of spirit that we connect with to bring about a desired outcome? Absolutely. Perfect. Straight on. Right up. Yep. You're right on. Okay. 268 homes. So here we are. The law says that whatever and wherever there is an adequate subjective image, which does not contradict the nature, the image will take form, will manifest. But this teaching should not be confused with the idea that we can show people how to get what they want regardless. This is right. So the caution is, we're not here teaching people that you can have anything you want, any wish you desire. There are some boundaries, there's some rules, there's some things, and because again, our objective is a successful life. And if we're running around saying, I want that, and I want that, and I want that, think of a 5-year-old in a candy store, and I want that, and that, and that, and that. And mom and dad say, you're only getting one of those. If we run around telling the universe, I want that, and I want that, and I want that, and I want that, that we get a mixed message. We're sending a mixed message. True prayer, and this is the first time in the chapter Holmes mentions prayer. Spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer. True prayer must be, thy will be done. But the implication relative to the will of God in this prayer is not a submission to the inevitability of evil or limitation. It is a knowledge that the will of God is always good. Remember, the universe is for us, not against us. Whatever God figure we imagine could not be against us, has to be for us. So when we're saying thy will be done, it cannot be that, well, my car died, thy will be done, and I'm going to suffer because of it. Or someone broke in and robbed our store, and that's just, the will of God is for me to suffer. No, the will of God is not for you to suffer. The will of God is not for you to have health challenges. The will of God is not for you to be a pauper and be begging in the streets. That is never the will of God. The will of God and the will of the universal divine, the will of the universal law is life. Is betterment, is moving forward, is expanding. How do we know what the will of God is? We do not, other than this. The will of God cannot be death. Why? Because if we assume God to be the principle of life, the principle of life cannot produce death without destroying itself. In which case it would have happened a long time ago, and none of us would be here talking about it. The will of life has only to, quote, capital letters, be life. The will of that which is infinite can never be finite. Everything then should tend to expansion and multiplication in the divine plan. That is the will of God. Expansion and multiplication. Multiplying our good, expanding our good. Expanding our reach, multiplying the number of people that are reached, that are touched by this philosophy. Folks, I want you to know, I know this book has changed countless lives. And I believe it has already changed yours as well, by the fact that you're here studying it again. However, if this is your first time through, remember, not only are you allowed to ask questions in the chat box, but we can always schedule a time to chat about this a little deeper, one-on-one, if you like, because I know this can be a lot to absorb if you haven't at least read through this one or have some understanding. Okay. Everything then should tend to expansion and multiplication in the divine plan. That is the will of God. Therefore, we should interpret the will of God to be everything that expresses life without hurt. Now, that's an interesting qualifier. So, someone that is intentionally causing harm. while they may still be an expression of God's life, they are not demonstrating the will, if you will. They are not expressing the will of God when they hurt, when they cause hurt. We have a phrase, hurt people hurt people. That's because that's what they know, but it is not who they are. And so even the reminder that hurt people has to push us to the reminder also that healed people heal people. So if we have been healed, our work requires us to in some way support the healing of those around us. And those are often the people that are doing the hurt. Now, Science of Mind also teaches we don't proselytize, so I'm not going to rush into something. If I see someone breaking the law, I'm going to report that. If I see someone hurting another human being, I'm going to interject myself into that. But it's not mine to assume that it's not mine to label someone as bad or evil just because they're doing harm. I could go down a rabbit hole right now about American politics, but I'm not going to. Therefore, we should interpret the will of God to be everything that expresses life without hurt. Anything that will enable us to express greater life, greater happiness, greater power, so long as it does not hurt anyone, must be the will of God for us. As much life as one can conceive, as much life as one can conceive will become a part of our experience. Anything that will enable us to express greater life, greater happiness, greater power. So if you like having a drink on Friday nights, and that helps you support and that helps you express a greater happiness, and cool. If you like to have a few drinks on Friday night and that doesn't lead to greater happiness, and that leads to arguments or abuse, or then that's not good. As much life as one can conceive will become a part of your experience. I did anything that, like, I have this vision, and many of you have heard about it, right? An intentional community nestled somewhere in the mountains and in some idyllic, beautiful space where we can run New Thought Media Network and step aside and serve in a way, and that good is mine to have. And as long as I continue to give that vision life, that vision can become a part of my life, of my experience, this network. As long as I continue to give it life and remember and utilize all these things, there can be no obstruction to the evolution of consciousness. Continue on 269. A mental avenue must be provided through which the law may operate as a law of liberty if we are to be free. This does not mean we must please the law, for the law is impersonal. And remember, the law is this creative power, this creative law. The law is impersonal and neither knows nor cares who uses it, nor for what purpose. Because it is impersonal, it is compelled by its very nature to return to the thinker exactly what one thinks into it. The law of mental equivalence must never be overlooked, for whatsoever one soweth, we also reap. And this is why, truthfully, the law works for those that have ill intent. And that is why those that seem to have ill intent or those that have ill intent seem to be able to continue their agenda and move forward and enact their things, their stuff, because the law doesn't care. Now, the check and the balance in this is the universe has a great ability to course correct, and if that intent is to cause misery, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second, then let's hear what Holmes continues. If one is intelligent, we will naturally seek to free ourselves from misery and unhappiness. Theology may say that this is a selfish motivation, but it is exactly what we are trying to do and calling it by a different name. Whether it is through the remission of sin or the salvation of the individual soul, every act in the life of the individual is that such an individual may express themselves. And if that expression is not the will of God, then while I may be aware of it or take notice of it, I don't have to kvetch about it. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to dwell on it. Every act in the life of the individual is that such an individual may express themselves more. For instance, the love of a mother for her child, a man for his wife, a patriot for his country, a preacher for his religion, an artist for their art, all of these are but ways of self-fulfillment and legitimate self-expression. We realize, however, that to attempt this self-expression at the expense of society or other individuals is to defeat the very purpose for which freedom exists, for back of it all is a unity. Hence, we find that the laws of necessity and not of theology and do ultimately compel experiences into the path of true righteousness. To me, this is that course correction. The universe has a great ability to course correct when someone goes off the rails. Sometimes takes a while. The criterion for one as to what is right or wrong for them is not to be found in someone else's judgment. The criteria is this: does the thing I wish to do express more life, more happiness, more peace to myself, and at the same time harm no one? If it does, it is right. It is not selfish, but if it is done at the expense of anyone, then in such degree we are making a wrong use of the law. So you're an outlaw. If you are using this to harm, if you are using this to put down others, to oppress people, if you are using this for ill-gotten gain, well, you're an outlaw. You're making the wrong use of the law. Oh my gosh, golly gee. See, that's what happens with this chapter. We don't finish it. We're still talking about the law. It is not necessary that we leave any. So this also on 270 here. I love this piece. One does not exist for the purpose of making an impression upon their environment. We do not exist to express ourselves in and through our environment. It is not necessary we leave an impression. It is not necessary if we should pass on tonight that anyone should remember that we have ever lived. All that means anything is that while we live, we live. And wherever we shall go from here, we shall continue living. I can speak often. I have spoken often on the eternality of life and how science of mind teaches us that once we release this body suit, we don't cognitively in this form know what comes next, but what comes next comes next. And that's why you'll often hear me refer to other dimensions of being other dimensions of living. The possibility of the laws are infinite, and our possibility of using it are limitless. There is such a thing as universal law in mind, and we can use it if we comply with its nature and works as it works. This is page 271. We're now into the point of demonstrating this law. The way it works is to begin right where we are, and through constantly applying ourselves to the truth, we gradually increase in wisdom and understanding, for in this way alone will good results be attained. Begin where you are and constantly apply ourselves to the truth. I talk often about creating the physical environment that makes it easy to study the truth at a hand's reach, and on my computer, all the books behind me. Those aren't just. I mean, I don't think there's any. I don't think there's any fiction back there, folks. I don't think anything back there is fiction, because I want to immerse myself in a study of the truth. On the bottom of page 272, we're going to skip around a little bit here. There is no medium between us and the universal mind except our own thought. In such a degree as we place a medium, we have to absorb that medium before we can make a direct approach. So there's two things here, right? This is part of why I believe in psychics, and it's also part of why I don't use psychics. Because psychics become a medium between me and universal mind. That medium also could be a belief that I'm not good enough. That medium could be a belief that says, I can't talk to God. Why would God be willing to take my phone call? So we want to be very clear and very careful. Don't let me be a medium between you and universal mind. Don't let this book be a medium, be a divider, be a barrier, be a challenge, be a hindrance, be a hedgerow, however we want to imagine it. Don't let anything, because what this line also tells us is we have the ability to make that direct approach to God. Can you talk to God? Absolutely. Are you doing it every day? Yes. Does it work better when we're conscious of what we're saying to God? Yes. You have that ability, so don't put anything in between you and God. Find your avenue. Meditation, prayer. The Bible says, this is one of those interesting, please remember, even in this book, we quote the Bible on occasion. The Bible says there is no mediator between God and man except Christ. Christ means the truth about ourselves. That's Holmes's word. Christ means the truth about ourselves. So am I a Christ figure when I'm living my truth? Am I that figure? Am I living in that Christ consciousness every single day of every moment? Nope. Still got plays to go. That's why Jesus, the Christ, the truth of himself, of who he came here to be, the truth of his word, and the truth of how he came to serve humanity's evolution, he lived that. He made that the truth of who he was and earned that title. But that does not mean he is the only one capable of earning that title. You are equally capable of earning that title, that distinction. So, bottom of 272 onto the top of 273. So we have to make a choice and feel we do not know which or what to choose. We must be still in our own consciousness and know that the spirit within us knows which of these ways is the right and most constructive way and will guide us. When intelligence makes a demand upon itself, it answers its own demand, and out of its own nature cannot help but do so. In philosophy, this idea is called emergent evolution. Wherever the universe makes a demand upon itself, out of that very demand is created its fulfillment, that but that can only be when the demand is in the nature of the universe. Are we sensing a theme here, folks? Successful living requires us to be in alignment with the nature of the divine, with the nature of the law, with the nature of the universal presence, with the nature of God, with the nature of oneness. And what is that nature? Life. Life, happiness. So, on 274, we get into a lesson about how to make this happen. Treatment. Treatment is not for the purpose of making things happen. It is to provide within ourselves an avenue through which they may happen. I'm not demanding that God puts puts forth and just gives me the resources and the money and everything necessary for an intentional community. My prayer is that I and others will become the avenue through which this can happen. Follow the difference? A little bit farther down on 274. Excuse me. Treatment is not something one does to another, not something one does to an environment, nor to a situation. I can't just say this isn't happening in the world and we didn't elect who we did and we're going to, and I can't work. It is always the thing one does to ourselves. Treatment is something we do to ourselves. Whatever whatever method enables me to do this good, to do this is a good method, a good way. Treatment is an action in thought alone. It opens up the avenues of thought, expands the consciousness, and lets capital R reality through. This is why I say it's sometimes a revelation. It's an affirmation of truth because it is what we know, but it is also a revelation of truth because sometimes capital R reality comes through. It clarifies the mentality, moves the obstructions of thought, and lets in the light. We already live in a perfect universe, but it needs to be mentally seen and spiritually experienced before it can become a part of our everyday life. Again, we're in this place of repetition. In such degree as the answer and the result is contingent upon any existing this is not what I want to share on. Okay, here it is. So let us take an example. Suppose I am confronted with a problem and do not know the answer to the problem. It happens to most of us pretty much every day, right? Every known fact is against the working out of this problem. I see the problem already. I say, I wish to treat this situation. I wish to handle it scientifically from the standpoint of spiritual science. My treatment then must not consider the facts. The facts are relative. The treatment must become absolute. Well, my job, I got let go of my job. That's a fact. I let go of my job and I don't have as much money coming in. That could be a fact. And my rent is due. That could be a fact. And my bank account doesn't appear to have enough money in it. That's a fact. But our treatment must not consider those facts because we can change those. The treatment must become absolute. I wish to get it over into mind as a complete acceptance, not of the old fact, but of the new one. In such degree as the treatment partakes of the nature of reality, it is going to have power. It can only have as much power as I embody. This is the limitation of treatment, not limitation in principle, but in performance. The thing itself, the law, God, is not limited. As we have proven that principle is not bound by precedent, we go into the realm that says, behold, I make all things new, not carrying with us the limiting belief of the reason why it cannot be. Any denial we make in treatment is simply to conduct us to a place of greater affirmation. This is the truth. We speak it, we declare it. We must differentiate. This is 276. We must differentiate between the divine presence as a universal spirit, a thing to be communed with, and the universal law, which is simply a blind force. Divine presence as a universal spirit, presence is different than law. The law is a blind force, and unless we misuse it, we should try very carefully to follow a we must very careful to follow a constructive course. The law is absolute, and we should trust its impersonal action implicity. It can do anything for us that we can conceive of it doing. It is the law of freedom for all believe in and obey it. This is so rich. I'm running out of time. We should maybe go again next week. We should train our thought. We should daily train our thought to recognize the Spirit in everything we do, say, or think. That's what we do in our prayer programs. Practice is a definite statement in mind, a positive affirmation. It is an active, conscious, aggressive mental movement, and in such degrees as it embodies an idea, and there is no longer anything in our mind which denies the idea, it will take form, because it now becomes a part of the law and order of the universe in which we live. Every problem is primarily mental, and the answers to our problems will be found in spiritual realizations. A good demonstration. Here we go. Here's our final conclusion, just as we need it to be. This is the last paragraph on page 278. A good demonstration is made when truth, gathering its own power, lifts one out of their environment, and until that time comes, we should stay where we are in order that we may know when we have made a demonstration. It is not a good demonstration if, when we give our treatments, we have to struggle just as before. Principle is absolute, and insofar as any individual can actually induce within consciousness, upon principle, a definite, concrete acceptance of their desire, it will manifest, even though every thought on earth has to change to compel it. If it were a bit of information that was needed for the demonstration that only one person on earth knew, that person was in the center of Africa, the information would be produced. Holmes is telling us that there's no possible way for our dreams to be denied. There's a possible way for us to deny it. There is no way our dreams our prayers can be denied. But we have to approach the law. We have to approach all of this with that open heart, with that right action, with that desire for good, to bring more life, to be a beneficial presence on the planet. Principle is absolute. And as you are able to induce in your own consciousness, using and aligned with these principles, this is what this is saying, a definite, concrete acceptance of our desire, it will manifest. A definite, concrete acceptance of our desire. Even if everything else on the planet has to change and move and be moved for you to have that desire. That is the promise of the science of mind and the law of these universal principles. My experience has been, it is sometimes much easier to understand and study than it is to practice and demonstrate. But that is what our work is about. And here on New Thought Media Network, we're starting something new. This kind of came to me. It's been coming to me recently in pieces, but I started talking about it last night on the Ask Me Anything show. We're going to begin, and I am now have a new project on my plate, to put together a way for us to share our demonstrations, to share the places where our own prayer work, the practical application of this philosophy, where we are demonstrating for good in our lives, in our communities. We're going to find a way to bring these demonstrations to light a bit more, and to celebrate them with you, and to share them through our prayer team, and through our prayer programs, and through other programs, and to be able to share the big wins and even the little wins. I'm often reminded that when we first come into this philosophy, we really do need to learn how to demonstrate and manifest the princes, the palaces, and the parking spaces. I am reminded that we need to be able to demonstrate the easy things so that they become easy, and so they're not a drain on our attention and our mental work and our our opportunities to demonstrate. And then we can get into the bigger wins and the other and different things. But every day in every way, there is some miraculous event that's happening in your life. You may not call it that now, but I'm encouraging us to start looking for those. Start looking, expect the miracles. Expect the miracles. Look for those miracles, and don't go into events and experiences blindly, with no concept, with no idea, with no desire. Every time you pick up the phone to have a conversation, have the desired outcome in mind. Know what it is you want to experience from that phone call, from that interaction. And what I believe is, together we are creating a world that works for all of life. Here at New Thought Media Network, at the New Thought Village, when that demonstrates and manifests itself into form in all the ways that you show up, in all the ministries that you are touched by, in all the different organizations that you are serving or paying attention to, we're doing the good work here, folks. We're practicing the principles of successful living through the science of mind and through the New Thought philosophy. So I want to thank you for being with us. I want to invite you to come on back again next week. If you are part of our committed giving program and you're already making a monthly donation to the New Thought Media Network, thank you for that. If you'd like to be a financial supporter and be part of our continuing support program, please consider making a donation to NT Media, New Thought Media Network. You can find it over at the website, ntmedia.org. Just click on the donate button. I'm Dr. Robert. It's a full, beautiful Saturday here today. I invite you to get out there and live it. Live it fully. Practice these principles of successful living. And remember that you are divine. You are perfect. And you are making a difference on this planet. I am grateful to know who you are. And I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Until then, I wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.